This is the ABQ Business Podcast with your host, Jason Rigby. Each week we'll interview visionary business leaders to inspire the creative power and spirit that's in every entrepreneur. Discussing strengths, weaknesses, strategies, systems, and the problems we can all solve together for a new future for local small business.
Hey guys, this is Jason Rigby, ABQ Business Podcast. Super excited today. I have Verne Harnish on. He is the founder of the world-renowned Entrepreneurs Organization with over 14,000 members worldwide. He's chaired for 15 years EO's premier CEO program, The Birthing of Giants, which is held at MIT, a program for which he still teaches today. He's the founder and CEO of Scaling Up, a global executive education and coaching company with over 180 partners on 6 continents. Verne has spent the past 3 decades helping companies scale up. He's the author of the bestseller, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which is translated into 9 languages, and along with the editors of Fortune, authored The Greatest Business Decisions of All Time, for which Jim Collins wrote the foreword in. His latest book, Scaling Up, Rockefeller Habits 2.0, has won 8 major international book awards, including the prestigious International Book Award for Best General Business Book. Verne, thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Jason, thanks for hosting me.
I'm really excited about what is the potential that we have now. I know we've gone through something that has been horrific. We're coming out into something that's a new reality. What are you seeing right now, being an expert in business? What are you seeing right now that companies are having to either getting an advantage on or something that they need to work on?
Well, I think everyone is focused, depending on where they are, in what city or state, is reopening and having, in some sense, kind of a grand reopening or restart. And so literally today, I pointed folks, there's all of these reopening documents and advice. And I really think Forbes put together the best, particularly for us mere mortal business leaders. So I'd encourage people to Google that, Guide for Reopening. And what I love is they put it in various categories, like how to bring people back to work if you're a retail organization, even how you're supposed to respond at the beach in this kind of thing. And they structured each of the pieces of advice in bullet points. They got feedback from experts, and they even put at the top of each one what they called the top line advice. So first, I think, look, I picked up a lot of ideas by reading through that. Don't just assume you know what you're doing. This is new. And the most important thing here is to get educated around what does it take to reopen properly.
Yeah, and I know, you've mentioned, Great by Choice in a lot of your interviews, and I know you love that book, and you encourage people to reread that book by Jim Collins. What are you looking at, in the landscape that we see now? I think leadership is probably one of the most important things that we're looking at when people are looking to something for safety or they're being fearful. What are you seeing on the leadership side of things?
Well, I thought Greg Brenneman, who's the great turnaround guy of Continental Airlines fame, PwC, Burger King, 48 other companies. He's on the board of Home Depot. And Jason, we hosted him at our very first virtual summit, April 2nd, so a couple of months ago. And I thought he had the line of this crisis. He said, look, great leaders absorb fear and exude hope. And that's our job. And if you're not up for it, then don't sign up, because leaders are not, it's not a privilege, it's a right. And that's what the great leaders have had to do during this particular crisis. I think the other things they've had to do is stay focused on basically planning for the worst. I know that now coming out of this, still looking at what's going to happen over the next 12 months, we're anticipating still no traditional dollars from what we've seen before. And so we're planning accordingly and making sure that we're loaded up on enough cash that we can survive this next 12 months. But at the same time, hoping for the best. And so you have to continue, because you're the chief energy officer, you have to continue to keep the energy up. And it's not fair, but as goes the leader, tends to go the rest of the organization. And so I think those are a couple of good pieces of advice that we'd receive. I think last, it's an absolute great time to be ambitious. And that was something that Margaret Heffernan shared with us again at that very first summit. And I know right after I heard her say that, the next day, we launched a new significant business and have been doing exactly as she said, able to get a hold of people that we normally, over the last dozen years, since everyone's had their hair on fire, we've been able to have meetings and structure opportunities and bolt on brands that we would not have ever had the opportunity to do during the good times. And so it's a great time to be ambitious.
I love that. And I know in your previous interviews, you talked about cash, and because I think this is a gem and that business owners can see this, is that you looked at having like a full year of payroll.
Yeah, it was something that came out of Jim Collins' last business book, Great by Choice, which I consider really his best, again, for us mere mortals. And his chapter on return on luck is the specific chapter we encourage people to take a look at. And that's where he said the great companies by choice were those that had cash so they could weather the storm and take advantage of opportunity. And that's why cash has always been king. And so one of the first things that Greg Brenneman did on the board of Home Depot was build a fortress balance sheet for them. And we've done exactly the same for our organization so that we can both take advantage of those opportunities and weather what we think are still storms ahead.
No, I love that. And I received an email from you, and this is kind of one of the main reasons why I wanted you on the podcast. You were talking about, and you wrote a book on this, Scaling Up or Down. And I'm looking at what's happening right now and being able to bounce forward. And you had these 4 Ps: people, pivot, process, and price. Could you speak to each of these? And I know people is number 1, and that's for a reason, on what it means for business leaders to look at this and say, how can we bounce forward instead of bouncing back?
Well, under the people category, Jason, there may be a lot of people available, but talent is still rare. Yet there's an opportunity right now for you to grab talent, grab relationships, grab brands that you wouldn't have otherwise. In essence, forge new relationships. So, for instance, we've been able to access just a world-class CTO, and we've had meetings all week, this week literally, culminating in one on Thursday, where we think we've got him on board for this new opportunity that we're going after. I know I was talking to Brian Scudamore up at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and Brian is looking for a CFO, and he has really broadened the net and knows that this opportunity to upgrade talent is significant. And so I think that's kind of the key thing here within people. Number 2, tied to it, is the ability to really deepen your relationships. And hopefully folks have over these last 2 months, how you initially responded and have brought yourself to this crisis with your employees, your customers, your suppliers, and those broader relationships have been critical, and I think will remain so. So that's the key, I think, people piece.
I know. Pivot.
Well, to finish out the people, I think it includes literally taking out a piece of paper. We did it again this week with the new venture and saying, all right, let's think as big as we can. What are the top 25 relationships that we want to bolt on to this organization moving forward? We were able to actually bolt on Harvard to some things that we're doing. If we switch to pivot, here the opportunity is to create a new category within your own existing industry. I think as the Gulf War did for CNN, this crisis is doing for many, many industries, including distance learning space that we're in. But I think you can go further and create a new category. So we've actually coined a term, near learning, instead of distance learning, that we're going to be spinning up, and we think we can popularize. I was just talking to a group that's been heavily involved in the healthcare kind of safety industry. And they identified that coming out of this crisis, though Hilton and Marriott and many of those have partnered with major health firms, the boutique hotels, who appear to be really busier than the main hotels because people are just wanting to escape.
Right.
They said, hey, why don't we take our healthcare capabilities and let's bring that to the hospitality industry. And they literally changed their logo this morning. They just sent it to me. And I'll be on a slideshow tomorrow showing how they've pivoted from cleanliness. They said, we don't think it's as much as that. We don't want to be in the cleaning business of these boutique hotels, but we want to be in the broader safety business. And within a week, they signed up already $3 million worth of contracts. And they went back to people, made a list of the top 250 boutique hotels that they're going after out of the 3,000 that they know exist. So that's really what they're doing specifically to pivot. And what they're working on right now is, what is this new category name that they have created that they can then further brand?
No, I love that, because it's, when you go to a hotel, it's more than just cleaning now. There has to be a safety aspect, like you said. So that is like a perfect pivot right into, that's amazing. And I love the creativity that's coming out of this. I think with every major challenge that we've had, in this great country, we've always seen technology explode, and I'm more of a optimistic person in this, but what are you seeing whenever you look at businesses changing their process, or you're looking at like a creative process or something that's happening with it?
Well, I think first we're trying it's the whole glass half empty or half full, and reminding folks that, look, let's plan for the worst, that this is a depression, that the global economy could drop and has been predicted by 25%. But what that means is that we're still facing a global economy that's twice what it was just at the turn of the century. In the year 2000, it's going to be 68 to 70 trillion, down from the 88 trillion we had last year. And that's still a lot of opportunity if you can get yourself focused on it. And so as part of strategy, we have a tool called SWEAT, Strengths, Weaknesses, and Threats. And if you want to think about this idea of having to build or rebuild, if you're actually building a physical building, there's two things that are critical: that you get the foundation down to bedrock, that you're clear, in our case, what are your core strengths and your core weaknesses? What are you absolutely great at? And more importantly, what are you terrible at? And then what you want to do is get the roof on as quick as possible. That means you got to get up on the roof and look over the forest and the trees and see, all right, where's the puck going? What are the significant trends? We've actually data mined the media and have identified a list of 125 both short and long-term opportunities that are coming out of this crisis. And then what you want to do is you want to see, what is the opportunity? We think boutique hotels are going to come back the fastest because of what's going on. And that aligns with the capabilities that we've got around our medical safety capabilities. And so let's match those two up, and let's go after the right 7% of the marketplace, which is exactly what Blue Canary is doing. And so those companies and many others have been using this SWEAT tool to match trends with the things that they're already good at, and making these particular kinds of pivots, recognizing we still have a massive global opportunity ahead of us. Now, if we go to that third P of process, hey, this is a chance to basically do spring cleaning. And that's what a lot of our clients have been doing over the last month, recognizing it's an interesting stat, Jason, that if you just look at simply revenue per employee, it's averaged among the global 500 about $475,000 US equivalent. What's interesting is the mid-market, companies kind of 10 million to a billion, it's about a fourth that historically. Even though we're these lean, mean fighting machines, we're absolutely sloppy. And so here's been an opportunity for companies to kind of step back and clean up their websites, clean up their processes, clean up their interactions, and make sure at the end of the day that doing business with you is easy. Because if there's any kind of friction at all to figuring out what you can do for me, how to order it, how to get the service, they're going to move on to somebody else who's made it even easier. And so we've actually been recommending Paul Akers' book, Banish Sloppiness. You can download it for free and begin to really pull your teams together and say, it's time for us to clean up. And the specific stat that we've got clients focused on over the next 6 months is, can we specifically drive gross margin per employee up significantly so that as then the economy comes back, we're really poised to do well. So that's where the process side is critical.
Yeah, and then whenever you look at price, and I know, and I want to kind of stay on this for 3 to 5 minutes, if that's fine, because I know with this, was talking to a business owner, and they said we probably lost 25% to Amazon, and we're not. And even if we get back to 100%, our 100% is going to be 75% because we're not going to be able to get that 25%. What are you seeing with pricing?
Well, first, of the 4 Ps of marketing, product, price, place, and promotion, it's the only one, Jason, that makes you money immediately. And that's what everybody needs right now is cash immediately. And the reason we get it so wrong is because we don't sell, particularly B2B, to companies. We sell to people. And if there's anything that we've learned about people, people are not logical, they're psychological. And that's why we get it wrong. So I'll come back to that in a moment. I think second, what we have to realize is that the Amazons in the world and the airlines this past 4 years who've had generally profitable years, there is no fixed price. If you look at Amazon using their AI, just the price of my book changes 15 times throughout the day. Yet the poor retailer competing with them will put a sticker on, and then the only time they change is when they're trying to give it away. A lot of us have seen it with airlines. You'll try to book a flight, it's a certain price, and then you didn't push the button, and you come back 5 minutes later, and it's already up $10, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they're on to me." They put a cookie there. They know I really want to go to the Bahamas badly, and the price creeps up. But that's the sophistication of pricing that we're up against, and all of us have to raise our game. And so one of the articles that we've been referring people to, and that I'll recommend a book, is about 1.5 years ago in Harvard Business Review. They did a very insightful article called Good, Better, Best Pricing. It's kind of the old Montgomery Ward's catalog. And they outlined how it's been a particularly powerful tool for the business-to-business space. And I remember at the end of this lengthy, detailed article, they referenced how Dell EMC, in pricing their after-sales service, went to a good, better, best offering and only increased revenue 300%. That's the kind of opportunity that you can really take advantage of. So with our virtual summits that we ran during this crisis, we offered a good, better, best pricing. There wasn't just a single price, which is, by the way, all we ever had when we were doing our physical summits. And the psychology that we learned about our customers was hugely insightful. So I'll finish up with a story. I was just in China before all of this hit. And one of my friends, Adrian Wall, has got a very simple business. He brings famous New York brands to Shanghai and then eventually to China. The first being the famous Joe's Pizza. And I'd mentioned some research from the great influencer, Robert Cialdini, that when they did this piece of research with restaurants in their wine lists, they found that most restaurants listed from least expensive to most expensive. All they had to do was reverse the order, Jason, and put the most expensive wine first down to the least. And it drove about 25% more revenue. Didn't change a price, didn't change a wine, just changed the order. Then if they anchored that list with 3 or 4 really expensive bottles of wine, they could pull the price, the revenue up almost 250%. So Adrian, a year ago, had heard me talk about this. And so when I saw him then here recently, when I was in Shanghai, he said, "Verne, you got to come down to Joe's Pizza, and I want to show you what we did." And sure enough, he said, we used to list on our pricing board, our product board, from the least expensive, it was a vegan slice, to our most expensive, kind of a meat lovers. He said, all we did was reverse the price. And we didn't get the 25%, but they got a 16% jump in revenue by just doing that. And that's how important understanding psychology is in pricing, which is why we both get pricing wrong. And as Herman Simon, the great pricing guru, said, there's only two mistakes we make with pricing. We either charge too much or we charge too little in the moment. And that's why you got to get it right. So we've been recommending both Herman Simons. He runs a $400 million pricing consultancy around the globe and has been a great advisor to us on pricing. But he wrote a book called Confessions of a Pricing Man, which we've encouraged people to read. But more importantly, back coming out of 2008 crisis, he wrote a little book called Beat the Crisis that is spectacular. And we're encouraging people to go right to chapter 6, where he outlines 7 definitive pricing strategies with concrete examples of companies using each in order to really power through the crisis. So pricing is a powerful psychological tool. And last, one of the things that we're finding is through a crisis like this, you hate to say it, but the rich are still rich. And in many cases, we're finding our clients can actually premium price as long as they're going after the folks who've got the money. And, show me the money kind of thing. So that's the fourth P of our people, pivot, process, and price focus.
Well, Verne, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the ABQ Business Podcast. I want to encourage people. You just gave us a bunch of tools, a bunch of gems. You told us all these different books that we can look at, even gave us chapters. I know Jack Stack, the founder and CEO of SRC Holdings, said about your book, Scaling Up. He said, imagine walking to a library and finding one book that captures the ideas of all the books in the library. Scaling Up is that business book. And he said, you will not have to go any farther. So I know all your books are available on Amazon. They could go on there. They can get Scaling Up. They can get The Greatest Business Decision of All Time and Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. I'd encourage everyone to get those 3 books. What's the best way if they want to learn more information about your company or you? What's the best website that they could go to?
Well, there's 2, Jason. Our normal website, scalingup.com, named after the book, hopefully easy to remember and find. And there's where we have a bunch of free chapters and tools and all of that. But we put up real quick a new site called scalingforward.com. And there we detail more around these 4 Ps. So scalingup.com and scalingforward.com.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate you being on, and I hope you and your family stay safe and that we can continue to move in this adventure of business.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, RigbyDigital.com. Make sure to subscribe and share. And go to abqpodcast.com. Get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner.